Rudimental Snare Drum Solo, Hotlicks, out of the Rudimental Cookbook by Edward Freytag. Let's drum. Makalacheco. What's up, guys? I am super excited about today. Today's video is going to be the start of like a new segment where I take a solo, drum solo, any type of solo, mainly percussion, and I break it down and I talk about what we can do in order to like learn this individual solo. Today what we're looking at is a solo called Hotlicks. It's out of the Rudimental Cookbook by Edward Freytag. It's very easy rudimental snare drum solo. And I picked it because I wanted to use it as an example to show you how to break down a solo and what to look for with breaking down any type of solo, and then also show you what you need to do with this individual drum solo and how to do it. If you're looking for a video of me just playing and no explanation, no nothing, just me playing it, you can go ahead. I'll put the link up right here of a video of me just playing it, and also link it down in the description below. Anyways, the way we're going to do this is we're going to break it down into 3 different steps, like kind of how we always do. The first one is going to be looking, analyzing, and identifying. The second one is going to be finding exercises. And the third one is going to be chunking it. Okay, so the first thing is looking, analyzing, and identifying. The first thing you want to do anytime you get or find any type of drum solo of any kind that you want to learn is you need to get your hands on sheet music, which I know isn't always necessarily the case. You might need to maybe transcribe something, which is a completely different beast, and we'll talk about that later. But a lot of times you can find sheet music online, so you need to find some type of sheet music, and you need to find some type of recording and make sure that it is a good quality recording. And you need to just look at the sheet music, and you need to just listen to the music, and then you need to listen to the music while looking at the sheet music. And what you're doing while you're looking at the sheet music or listening to the recordings or watching somebody play the music is that you're looking for any type of rudiments, maybe some type of weird rhythms, spots in the solo that you think might be difficult for you personally, maybe spots in the solo that are going to be easy particularly for you, maybe some like dynamics, any type of thing. You're trying to figure it out and decode it and come up with a plan so that way you can get out of the learning phase quickly, so that way you can get into the playing phase quicker. Because nothing's worse than getting stuck on a solo, drum solo, whatever, and being stuck in the learning phase, and then you just never feel like you're playing music. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at this piece of music, and then we're going to listen to it while we look at the piece of music. Okay, so looking at this music for the first time, the first things that jump out at me are all of the dynamics and the crescendos, because there's not a lot of them and the solo is really small, so it really kind of jumps out, especially with each line only being 4 measures. Each crescendo is half a line almost. So if we look at measure 11 and 12, we have a crescendo going to a double forte. Measure 17, also line known as line 5, is a crescendo, and it's going from piano to doesn't say, so we're gonna have to interpret that at some point. At C, we have a decrescendo, and it's going into a forte, so not really sure how that's gonna line out. We're gonna have to figure that out. And then we have a crescendo at the very end, the last 2 measures, and then it's ending on a really loud flam. Now, if I go back to the very beginning of this and I start really looking at the notes, what I notice is that the whole first line is nothing but 8th notes. And they're paradiddles. Right, left, right, right, left, right, right, or left, right, left, left. We have 2 paradiddles in an 8th note form. But the next 2 measures, we have paradiddle. We have triple paradiddles. So we don't just have single paradiddles, but we also have triple paradiddles. The next measure, we have 16th note paradiddles, or a single paradiddle in a 16th note form, followed by a bunch of lefts, and then we have a left-handed single paradiddle, followed by a bunch of rights. So what we have is kind of like a reverse sequence. And you'll notice that in a lot of rudimental music, this happens a lot. It's kind of like a showcase, like, hey look, I can do it all off the right. Oh, hey look, I can also do it all off the left, kind of thing. And that's exactly what's happening right here. Now, also looking at, besides the dynamics jumping out at me, measures 8, 11, 12, and almost an extent 13 and 14, those are kind of the hardest rhythms. Those are the hardest notes and the hardest measures, especially measure 11 and 12, because they're broken 16th note rhythms. They're the only real spot where there are broken 16th note rhythms, and especially measure 11 and 12 being a little difficult because that's technically a syncopated 16th note and a crescendo on top of having broken 16th note rhythms. So I already am thinking, okay, this is a spot that's going to give me some trouble. And also right before that at measure 9, coming right out of the 1 and a 2 and a, is a bunch of quarter notes, but not just quarter notes, flams. Now, the hardest thing to do for any drummer is to have or to be responsible for space and to have space. And as you can see right here, that's exactly what's going on. We have so we have these quarter notes and we have these flams that we're now responsible for the time, and we can't physically subdivide. We have to subdivide internally, and we'll talk more about that later on. We have this crescendo and it's going into these two measures, 1 and a 2en, 3e, a 4, or 1 and a 2en, 1e, a 2. However, numbers kind of matter, don't matter. And then we're going over into B. Now, as we look into B, we have a bunch of broken 16th note rhythms, which we kind of talked about already, but we also have a repeat sign starting at 13. And then as you can tell in measure 15, we have paradiddle left right, which is counterintuitive to the straight sticking, but it is also still alternate. It's like reverse sticking. Right, left, right, left, right kind of thing. And then it stays on that reverse sticking, that left hand lead for measure 16. So measure 16 could also be challenging because of that left hand lead, that 1 and 2, and then we have that quarter note. Now, then we have measure 17, and we have this entire line is nothing but 16th notes with a repeated sign. This is going to be difficult just because we want to make sure we have really even hands. If we don't have even hands, then it's going to sound blah 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 blah. No one wants to hear that gallop. No one wants to hear that. They want to hear constant, and they want it to kind of crescendo because that's there. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, with this quarter note right here, you're probably going to hit this 16th note a little too hot. But I'm going to tell you is let this quarter note work for you. Take that time. Take a breath. Do something. Really feel that 8th note that's right here. And make sure, and maybe you could even take that moment to move your sticks to the edge. So that way it's like pulse. It's like 1 and da 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 da, and then you can move up. And if you utilize that space and you use it to your advantage, then you're gonna nail measure 17 perfect every single time. Now, I think I already kind of talked about how it starts on piano and then it crescendos, but it doesn't tell you what it's gonna crescendo to. And then it decrescendos after it repeats once. And it decrescendos to a forte. So we have some things that we're going to have to kind of interpret. And we're going to look at the recording with that here in a second. But make sure that when you repeat something, that you play it as close to the same as you possibly can, especially with a rudimental solo. Normally, if you're playing something melodic, I would say if it repeats, exaggerate it a little bit more the second time. Be a little bit more musical with it. But with this being such an easy solo, probably your very first solo, I would recommend trying to play it exactly the same both times. Okay, so now we're at C and we have this decrescendo and we have nothing but singles going on. So that's not going to be too difficult. This is kind of like, okay, I did my giant crescendo and now I'm decrescendoing and I'm calming back down to make sure that I hit 23 correctly. We're at 23. We have paradiddle 1, paradiddle 2. Right? So making sure that right, left, right, left with that quarter note, feeling that internal pulse on the and of 2, making sure that that internal pulse is there, and then feeling that we have that paradiddle 2. Again, right here, feeling that again. And if you notice, we have that same theme. Right, left, left, and then left, right. So it's like back and forth. We constantly have that going on. Like, hey, I did it off the right, now I'm going to do it off the left kind of thing. And then in measure 25, we have something new, a new sound, a new timbre has been introduced by it being played on the rim. Now, I'm telling you right now, do not be deceived with the rim. It looks easy, but if you're not used to going around the drums and stuff like that, moving the 6 inches from the center of the drum or even the edge of the drum to the rim can really mess with your head. And make sure that you play on the rim on the front half of the drum, not the back half. We want to try to avoid playing on the rim on the back half, especially if it's just a rudimental snare drum solo, because then you're more likely to have like an accidental rim shot of some kind. And if we play in the front, then we know we're just going to get that nice high-pitched clicking sound. So after those rims, we have paradiddle left-right and paradiddle right-left, echoing what was in 23 and in 24, except it's eighth notes instead of ending on a quarter note. Then we end the entire piece with a bunch of doubles, starting out with eighth notes, right, right, left, left. So we have some double stroke rolls going on, right, right, left, left, and then 16th note doubles, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, end on the flam. So from all of that, we can gather that we have single paradiddles, we have triple paradiddles, we have single stroke rolls, we have flams, and we have double stroke rolls. 5 rudiments that we need to make sure that we focus on in order to play this exercise correctly. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we are going to watch me play this solo while looking at the music, and we're going to kind of break it down a little bit more and why I made some of the musical choices that I did, although there's not very many with this solo, but you can kind of see what I'm talking about, why I'm playing in the center of the drum, why I chose to crescendo from the center up, or why I chose to crescendo from the edge to the center, things like that. So let's go ahead and look at this here. So starting out pretty loud in the center of the drum, playing those paradiddles. Okay, making sure I have a nice full stroke. Okay, so now if you notice, those flams were pretty open, maybe a little too open to be a rudimental snare drum solo, but I had that's a choice that I had, and I had the ability, because they were just quarter notes, there's nothing else coming in before them or after them that needs real quick attention, really. So I decided to make them nice, really flammy flams, nice and open kind of thing. Especially if you're a beginner, it's important to have your flams be extra open than it is to have them extra closed, because it's easier to close them than it is to open them. Also, if you notice that when I did that crescendo, I crescendoed, but I crescendoed from the center of the drum. Now, the reason I crescendoed from the center of the drum is because I'm going from forte to double forte, basically loud to louder. And that is kind of a hard thing to do. And if you also notice, at 11, I do a little tricky thing where I actually play it a little bit lower, almost at a mezzo forte type of deal. I'm using the drum to my advantage. I'm letting the timbre of the center of the drum, which sounds really beefy, so it doesn't sound like I'm playing that low, but then I'm actually lowering my stick height, so that way I'm getting this really nice, quiet, beefy sound, and I'm crescendoing it and getting myself to have a much bigger range from loud to soft. Because remember, snare drum is boring if you just do loud all the time. You need to have those extremes of extreme loud and extreme soft, and it really does make a difference. Okay, so now if you notice here, when I do the repeat, so when I first started, I made sure I started out pretty low. I made sure that I started out lower than when I did that original crescendo, because I wanted to make sure that people know that this is a different dynamic. It's a different dynamic. It's not the same as everything else. Okay, so then I have I have measure 17, and I start really, really quiet. And if you notice, I go to the edge of the drum and I crescendo. And the reason I do that is I'm letting the drum work for me again. I am letting the timbre, which is a much higher timbre from being at the edge, which it's a higher timbre, and when you play it quietly, it gives the illusion that you're playing extra quiet, when in reality you just did a timbre change and not an actual dynamic change. And I bring that to, and I move that to the center of the drum where I have a much beefier sound, and I play loud. But notice that I did not play as loud as I did with the double forte. It's actually a little bit over, so that way I can get into that mezzo forte and it sound still good. I don't want to overplay the drum or overplay the solo. Here I go. From the edge all the way to the center. Okay, so like right here, I had to make some musical decisions. It doesn't really tell me how far to crescendo. Now, you can argue and say that the crescendo that's happening at, at the end of 20 is actually crescendoing to mezzo forte. So that should be from piano to mezzo forte. And you could do that. That'd be totally cool. But I'm all about making sure I get those extreme dynamic changes. So I said that I wanted to crescendo a lot louder, especially when at C, at 21, it doesn't tell you what to crescendo to. So it goes from 17 to 21, and I wanted to make sure that it got louder, like way louder. Like, to me, that is the peak of the piece, this really long crescendo. Now, when I'm at C and I'm decrescendoing, again, I had these decisions to make. I could have decrescendoed from whatever peak I was at, which was probably about maybe forte plus or double forte. I could have decrescendoed that all the way down to just the forte. Or what I decided to do, which was to decrescendo down pretty low and then hit 23 a little bit louder. So that way you really get this musical phrase, this figure that goes all the way down, and then it hits the forte, which is louder, because now we are in a new section. Okay, so there's a lot of things going on here. If you notice, again, I went at 31 when I had that crescendo. I went from the edge to the center of the drum, letting the drum work for me. This is a really good technique that I used to use all the time to trick my band directors and my directors all the time. They'd be like, play quieter. Look, playing at the edge, I'm not gonna lie to you. Playing at the edge does not mean you play quieter. It's a timbre change, not a volume change. Okay? Now, if you play at like a double F or triple F or something like that at the edge, it's gonna sound very thin. It's gonna sound very plasticky. You might even hit the rim. It's not gonna be good. So the edge is really only meant for really tight, low playing anyway. But it is a higher timbre than the rest of the drum than when you play in the center of the drum, which is more of a nodal point. So it's more beefy, it's more thuddy. You know, you get much more of a louder sound. So a lot of times you can trick people in thinking that you're playing quieter on the drum by being at the edge and pulling in. And then if you combine that with the actual stick height, then it'll happen. Now, if you look at measure 31, I started at the edge and I went all the way to the center, and I really kind of stung that Flam a little bit because it was the end of the piece and it's an accent. Now, this is a cool thing to do because everybody wants to end on a really loud note. Everyone wants to start rock and roll and everyone wants to end rock and roll. But don't get in the habit that every single note that you play at the end of a piece of music, a warm-up, or whatever is an accent, because that's not always going to be the case. Okay, so now that you've really done the bulk of the work, you've looked at it, you've analyzed it, you've identified all of these things, now it's time to find some exercises that are going to pertain to that actual solo, that whatever it is that you're doing. I see this more and more with young people. They just want to find the coolest lick. They just want to find the coolest exercise. And I'm not going to lie, like, I kind of fall into that trap sometimes too, because it's fun, you know? It's easy, it's quick, it's fast, and especially with this instant gratification world that we live in, you want to learn just a 2-bar phrase, a 4-bar phrase, or whatever, and just immediately go. But you want to make sure that you are finding something that's going to help you work on the hard parts that are going to be in this solo. Don't just find any type of lick or whatever and be like, okay, cool, I'm warmed up, let's go. Your warm-up needs to mean something. If you're just playing things to play things and then you go and try to like actually sit down and do constructive practicing, then you're not gonna have a good time. Your warm-up is constructive practice time. So some good warm-ups or some good exercises that you can do that'll pertain to this particular solo that'll help you get ready and work on the skills that this solo is actually working on is Sweet 16, and that last 16th note bar, you're going to do singles, then you're going to do paradiddles, you're going to do triple paradiddles, and then you're going to do doubles. For the flam, the best thing that you can do with the flam, especially since there's not a lot of fancy flam work going on in here, it's just quarter notes, is literally just working one flam at a time. Brop, brop, brop. Just one flam at a time, alternating, because that's what's going on in the actual solo. Now, if you're unsure of like how to do a flam or something like that, you should go ahead, check out this video. I already made one. I'll put it right here. I'll also link it down in the description below about how to do a flam and how to learn how to do a proper flam and to practice making them open to close, back to open, and things of that nature. So what I think a really cool thing that you could do is if you just work on those measures, I think it's measures 9 and 10, then you can really just isolate each individual hand. And honestly, that's what a lot of people don't realize, is that you can use parts of the solo or any type of music really that you're playing in order to create an exercise. And that's like the ultimate way to make some type of exercise that you know is going to relate to the solo or whatever type of particular music that you're trying to play at the time. Another really good example of this is if you play measures 17, 18, 19, and 20, where it's just straight 16th notes and it's crescendoing. This is a really good exercise to get good at going from soft to loud. And I would even practice it going from the edge of the drum to the center, and then going from the center of the drum just using the heights of your sticks. And you could even break this down with just using the right hand and just breaking it down to its 8th note form. It's just 8 on a hand. I don't want to make you feel bad or anything, but it's just 8 on a hand. You can do the right hand, ton, 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 do it the left hand, and then practice that. Because remember, nobody wants uneven hands. No one wants to listen to uneven hands. And of course, you can always put those dynamics, if you're having trouble with them, on any type of exercise or any type of warm-up that you may do. Sweet 16, or maybe you're doing 8 on a hand. You can go down and up, or up and down, kind of thing like that. 16 note timing, same thing, up and then down and then up. There's a lot of ways that you can practice those dynamics, but don't be afraid to pull measures out of a solo or of whatever type of music that you're playing in order to practice it and throwing it into some type of grid that you've made yourself. Step 3, chunk it. Okay, no, I don't actually mean like throw your music, but what it means to chunk music is that you take different chunks of the actual music and you play just those. Now, if you just look at the piece of music, it is already chunked into 3 sections: the A section, the B section, and the C section. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have just those 3 sections. You can break each of those sections down into subsections, and you can even break them down into measures or even parts of measures. The best way to chunk any type of solo is to first identify what is giving you trouble. Now, where you might have analyzed and identified, hey, this is going to be a hard section for me, it might turn out that it's not, and something else is giving you trouble. Or maybe what you originally thought was going to give you trouble is giving you trouble. Find that measure, find that chunk, find that line, whatever it is. Practice just that. Analyze it, figure it out. Where is it? For example, if we look at Hotlicks, I originally said that measures 8, 11, 12, 13 and 14 and maybe even 16 were going to be the trouble measures, with 11 and 12 being probably the hardest ones. What I would do is I would hone in on those 2 measures. I would play them and I would say, okay, measures 11 and 12, what is it about this that's giving me trouble? Maybe it's just 12. Maybe it's the 1 a 2. Maybe that's what's giving me the most trouble. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to pull that measure out and I'm going to stick it into some type of exercise of some kind. Maybe 16 note timing, maybe Sweet 16. Maybe I have my own type of thing that grid or something that I fall back on. Maybe I'm doing something like that. Then what I'm going to do when I feel good about that measure, I'm going to back up one measure. and I'm going to start at measure 11, and I'm going to go 11 and 12. What this is going to do is get rid of the isolation. It's good to isolate, but if you only practice that measure when it's isolated, if you start from the beginning and then go, what you'll notice is that you'll stop right at measure 12 and you won't go in, and you'll realize that you have to reset yourself. You'll play measure 12, and then you'll have to maybe reset yourself again because you're so used to only playing it, and you can only play it correctly at in its isolated form when it's just by itself. So if you back up one measure, you can play that one measure along with the treble measure and then go forward one measure. So what I would do is 1 and a 2 and 3 a 4, 1 and a 2 and I would do that much, and then I would back up one more measure before and one more measure afterwards until I felt like I had a pretty good chunk. So what I would do is I would keep doing that until I hit measures 9 all the way to the downbeat of measure 17. I personally always like hitting downbeats. Not saying that you have to hit downbeats, but it sure does make things a lot easier. So I would make that one chunk. Now I realized that like step 2 where you find the exercises and step 3 where you start trying to like chunk it and things like that, they kind of bleed over because, you know, you're chunking something, you take it out, you put it into an exercise, you come back to it, you know, and then you put it back in place, and then you play it in context. That's a good thing. Don't be afraid to do that. Make sure that you practice these exercises and not just run the solo over and over and over and over and over again. If you just run the solo, you're not learning. It's going to be frustrating, and it's going to go extra slow. Okay, so I know that this video was a little bit longer than I would have liked it to be, especially for a breakdown of such an easy solo, but it wasn't just going over the solo, it was also going over the process of how to break down a solo. In later videos, when I start breaking down more and more solos and things like that, I'm not gonna go so much into the process of it, other than like, this is how we break it down, this is the exercises you should use, and these are the chunks that I chunked in order to be able to play the solo. So that's it. I hope you liked it. If you did, go ahead, hit that like button. If you really enjoyed it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that way you don't miss out on further content. And if you want to be extra special, you can hit that little notification bell that's down there so that way you're notified and whatnot, because I'm sure that you're just dying to see what's going on with ParaDiddlePete. Anyway, if you want to watch me on Twitch, I got my Twitch down there. I stream some music, making beats and things like that, and you can follow me. All that stuff is right down there. All right, anyway, Makla Choco! Boom, boom!